So I recently saw a reel with Hassan Minaj and Mel Robbins, and they were talking about the let them theory. And I loved the example that they gave because, he's talking about like, when do you step in or when do you let go or when is letting go not safe? And it really resonated with me. So with the let them theory, it says that we should let people make their own choices, even if we disagree with how they're handling something. But when it comes to a declining parent, letting them can mean worse illness or potentially even death. And so again, how do we find the line there? So let's say your parent refuses to use a walker. They insist that they're fine and you want to respect their autonomy, but after a second fall and a broken hip and a surgery that follows, you realize that letting them isn't loving. So sometimes you have to step in and insist that this is necessary even when it's uncomfortable. And that's where we have to recognize what are they currently capable of and what are the potential outcomes of not stepping in. As a therapist, we're mandatory reporters and we're listening for things like, is someone letting an elderly adult be neglected, or are they being harmed? And this is where you have to kind of ask yourself, if I don't step in, is this potentially neglect? And this is really where grief and guilt and resentment can creep in, because you feel like maybe you're betraying them, or you're losing the parent that you knew because that relationship has changed so drastically. And you might even resent the burden because you're overwhelmed in your own priorities and your own stressors in your own life. And then when you prioritize your own life, then you feel guilty that you want your own life back. And so it's a really complicated factor. And of course, you don't want them gone, right? None of us ever want them gone. And so it's really tricky. It's a hard time. And so you've got to figure out how to navigate the grief and the resentment and the potential guilt. And caretaking really brings up a storm of emotions. And because I think a lot of times what we forget when we're in this role is that we matter too. We're prioritizing the needs of the person who needs our care. And because it's more dire or it's more stressful or maybe even life-threatening, we kind of table our own priorities in our own life because it seems like it's okay. But if we do that for too long, we end up pouring from an empty cup, and that is only something that we can sustain for so long. We can't pour from an empty cup. We have to rejuvenate our own cup. We have to have our own self-care. And so, again, back to the delegation, it's really going to be necessary at times. Use home health aides. There's some adult day programs that might be useful. There's respite care. There's all kinds of ways that we can enlist resources to help us balance this. And then, of course, at the crux of all of it is communication. You've got to be honest with your family about what you can do, what you can't do, what you need help with, what support looks like, and you've got to communicate that. If you don't communicate, people don't know what you're going through. They can't be there for you to be supportive if you don't express what it is that you need. And so communication is key. As in all relationships, that is the truth. And then we have to look at planning ahead. You want to talk about medical power of attorney. We want to talk about living wills and get those things in order. Care preferences before there's a crisis. What do people want done when they do pass? What are their after life wishes? And how do we make sure we can get those things set up so that we're not dealing with that at the same time as the loss? So I had a client that talked to me about hiring a part-time caregiver so that she could keep her job and still care for her dad. And she felt really guilty at first, but as soon as she realized that delegating allowed her to just show up with more patience and more love and more kindness, rather than the frustration and the resentment over having to be not just the caretaker, but also the daughter, she was actually able to be more kind when she was with her parent. So it's important to remember that you're doing the best you can in an impossibly hard situation, and perfection can't be the goal because there's no such thing as the perfection. Presence is really the goal. Being present, maintaining the relationship, protecting the love and the compassion is really the priority during this hard season. And giving yourself some grace when you get it wrong. And again, circle back and repair when you do. So when this is part of your life, we've got to look at balance. We've got to look at kind of reclaiming our joy and becoming adaptable in these moments. And caretaking can really feel like it just swallows your life. But adaptability means finding moments of joy, even when they're really short, even when they're small, looking for gratitude everywhere that you can, because these seasons can be long to endure. Maybe, you and your parents share a laugh over old photos, or you reminisce and talk about things that you used to do. But finding quiet moments for yourself with, a cup of coffee and a sunset, or a cup of coffee and a sunrise, or just taking in a sunset. Really, those quiet moments of gratitude are so important, and they help you to remind yourself that you're still you, and your parent is still more than their illness. And that's hard to remember when you're really consumed with the caretaking responsibilities. Remember to celebrate small wins every time that you advocate, every time that you ask for help, every time that you set a boundary. You're growing, you're putting yourself first, you're navigating a hard time, and it gives you an opportunity to reconnect with yourself. And again, finding moments that are just yours, even if they're brief. Remember, even when it's hard, that you're not failing, you are loving. This is a tremendous act of love and compassion and kindness, and oftentimes sacrifice. And so, again, please be kind to yourself.